We're back and we are waiting for the connection from our next two guests, who are a pair. They are Poe Movies, and we would like to welcome Thad and Season. And I'm going to let one of you say your last name so I don't butcher it. So, whichever one wants to take the last name so I don't have to say it.
It's Ciechanowski.
Ciechanowski.
Okay.
Hey, that's fine. I just keep thinking of Wostankowski from like Miller. Never mind.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. But anyway, these are our Poe Movies guests. They are going to be joining us and they're going to be sharing their wonderful projects with us.
Yes.
And those projects, they actually have a website that you go check them out. Mm-hmm. They are primarily creating accurate film renditions of Poe's classic short stories and poems, as well as other works of classic literature. They are very, very good about sharing out to public for use because they're centered on some education topics. Mm-hmm. It's their intent to bring the short stories of Edgar Allan Poe to life for a manner that is visually engaging, true to the original story, high production value, and an effective teaching tool for all levels of education. Goal is to plant the seeds of interest in literature and history into the minds of the young and elicit a dialogue between them and their educators. So their first film, The Cask of Amontillado, was the recipient of a 2013 Emmy Award, and The Raven just recently received its own Emmy Award in 2015. And both films are distributed to educational facilities across the United States and Canada, DVD and digital formats for download and streaming. And a combination of their films is billed as The Tales of Madness and is set to air on PBS, American Public Television, and all the United States and Canada.
On Halloween.
On Halloween.
Yes.
That's even better. So thank you for joining us, Thad and Season, and we look forward to seeing some of your wonderful works.
Yes, and I believe you're nominated for Saturday Visitor Award again this year, so that's exciting.
Yes, and so if you guys will just take it away and tell us more about yourself before we jump into the wonderful projects you are sharing with us.
Yes.
I think you more or less said most of it in a nutshell.
Well, I kind of wanted to, I just kind of read it from your website because I thought this is the perfect introduction to give everybody, even though we've interviewed you for our Poe Unplugged,
right?
So,
yes,
and our podcast. So, but we wanted everybody to know how wonderfully you are receiving accolades with your awards. Mm-hmm.
So we make the films too. We also do. We also have a YouTube channel that doesn't just cover Poe. It covers a lot of history, mostly Victorian history, but we do go into some other eras as well. And it's, largely educational. It's stuff that can be used for school purposes. It's like explainer videos about different Poe stories. We just had one in the fall, the House of Usher, come out. And also little mini bios about different people in history. We did one on Nikola Tesla, one on Thomas Edison. Just things like that. So that's a lot of our time spent on the YouTube channel, in addition to being spent on the films.
That's cool.
And I would like to just ask one question that maybe not everybody knows. Mm-hmm. What drew you to start the projects to begin with? I mean, what was your big thought? Is like, oh, we need to do this.
You mean in terms of
just starting YouTube anything? Mm-hmm. The whole thing of publication and productions.
Yeah.
Well, so the inspiration for the Poe films, so I had an English teacher in high school that was very attentive to me and kind of turned me on to the significance of literature, especially kind of the classic stuff that a lot of people might regard as uninteresting, but but they're very interesting, and they're all relevant. People 100 years, 200 years, even 10,000 years ago were the same people. It's just the circumstances are different. Mm-hmm. Even physiologically, we're the same people. So sort of understanding that kind of made me think, okay, cool, this is really interesting. I kind of got into reading Chaucer, Shakespeare, stuff like that. And then I remembered The Cask of Amontillado, and I just thought it was like this kind of dark and trippy story that would make a cool film. So I made that film, and in doing that research for that film, I kind of learned a lot about Edgar Allan Poe himself, and that his life story is maybe more interesting than the stories that he writes. So then you can see it as you encounter different people in this world. You see that there's a fascination with his life, his works, the theories around um, his life, his death, his work, his career, his artistic philosophies. All those things are very layered and very interesting. And so that's kind of where the uh, love of Poe came from, is kind of from that film. And then later we made The Raven, Telltale Heart, and it's kind of a continuation of that that initial inspiration.
Very nice.
Okay.
So I don't know if Season has anything else to add about that.
I would say like we try really hard not to trash talk other interpretations of Poe, but to be frank, it's really hard to find. Like when I used to be an English teacher, and it's really hard to find when you're teaching certain subject matter. It's hard to find good adaptations to show your students.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I know Thad is really passionate about, we love Vincent Price, and there's no knocking what's come before in terms of like how Poe's been interpreted. But one of the things that we tended to find a lot was that like a lot of the adaptations were extraordinarily loose and
Yes.
were not direct. And it wasn't, and it also like there was no runtime that like, if you're a Poe fan, you could sit down and watch it and be like, oh, this is my favorite story. And then get done and be like, oh, that's so close. Finally, somebody did something that's close to
Mhm.
capturing how I've always, pictured it in my head, because there's so many adaptations where they take things and like, a lot of these stories are only 3 pages long. It doesn't need to be an hour and a half. It
Right,
doesn't need
right.
to be an hour. It
Mhm.
just if you're doing a direct adaptation or the best that you can close to the story, ours are all run times of like 15, 20 minutes.
Mhm.
Because, and in that way, you're keeping closer to the format. Like a short film makes more sense for a short story. And also if you're teaching Poe, it fits in perfectly if you've done your lesson and you maybe want to end your unit study on Victorian, or not Victorian, but like the American Gothic. Like I used to teach a unit on American Gothic, and Poe obviously was
Mhm.
like, he was front and center for that, because he really pushed for, America to have its own literary genre instead of constantly trying to imitate Britain. So like when you teach that, it's really good to have good quality content. So along with the films, what we're trying to do is craft a YouTube channel that everything kind of fits together. So if you can watch a film, but you can also have a kid watch a short and then ask them about it the next day and they can get points, or it doesn't matter. You could be homeschooling too. It doesn't really matter. It's really what I was talking to my kid the other day. We were talking about the channel because our children are involved with our YouTube channel. They write scripts as well, because we want to make sure any age can be in it. It doesn't just have to be us old people. So like I was saying to them, I'm like, the essence of our channel is really that our family loves to learn. And when we learn things, we love to share it with people. And
Yeah.
I'm not teaching anymore, but I've noticed that I've never stopped loving teaching. It's just a different way. So
Yeah.
like, I feel like we love to make the films and we're passionate about Poe and we're passionate about like history and literature, but we're also just really passionate about learning.
Yeah.
So, and it falls along the lines of history and literature. And that's like all of our kids. Our kids do the same thing. So we just like to share that and make it easy for, good content, so that whether you're a teacher and you want to watch it and it helps you with your lesson plan, or you want to assign it, or you're a kid that just read it and you're just Googling it because you just read the cask and you're like, well, I want to learn more about this. You're going to stumble into our channel and you're going to start finding this whole entire world of interconnectedness, because you've got the Victorian era. And so you can read something with Poe, and then you can watch any number of our content, of our videos that links to that, that talks about, I have one on cast iron caskets, for instance. That was a thing, like,
Cool.
and that ties back to all the disease that was around Poe and like wanting to be able to view your loved one and not catch, tuberculosis. So it's just, I don't know. We have a lot of fun with our channel, and I'm hoping overall that just comes out, that people can understand that we love learning about Poe. We love learning about history and literature. And I kind of hope it comes across,
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing that I do love is the cross curricula, because it's
Yes.
not just history, it's not just literature, but you can throw in the science part of it, like you were talking about with the different diseases and the caskets and the cast iron. And a lot of the students, I hate to say today, don't want to delve into and ask those questions, but if you can get their curiosity piqued,
Yes.
then maybe they'll want to ask more and want to learn more. And so it's very, very well
Yeah. And I
contained.
know Susan and I have had this conversation before at the Poe Fest last year about just context
Mhm.
and the, literature in context, but just also the background knowledge that a lot of students, a lot of young people
Mhm.
are lacking. And you have to goes two steps back teaching to make sure that they have that context to be able to understand this was the times, 200 years ago. Things are very different now, so you've got to look at it through a different lens, and sometimes that's hard for them to do with social because of social media.
It's
Yes.
really fun doing these videos because every time I learn, I mean, we have so many things now that come from the Victorian era that it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you study history, like when I went to college, I was an English major, and we had to go through all the different, we've talked about this, Carmen, like how you
Oh, yeah.
learn all the different critical, like all the different schools of criticism for literature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like deconstructionism is at the bottom, and I think it needs to stay there. But like the way that like we kind of approach things is like I've told you, like the context is king thing. I really feel like you learn more about something, like you were saying, like when you understand the context. And the more that we study stuff and dive deeper into our channel and do these videos on history and literature, I learn more about, I understand Poe's work more, and not even just Poe, but like I did a video on Robert Frost's Out, which I really enjoyed. And like even just the leftovers from the Victorian era kind of just float into Robert Frost's work. So the more that you tie all of this stuff together, whether you're a student or like in school, or you're like us, we just like to learn, right? I think we all like to learn.
Oh, yeah.
So you watch this stuff, and like then as you grow, you look at it differently. It changes. Like we've had plenty of kids come on and comment on YouTube saying that they never really understood the Raven until they saw it, because they heard the vocabulary spoken out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. So like you can read it a million times and take a vocabulary checklist, do a vocabulary checklist, and take a quiz on the vocabulary from the poem. But when you sit there and you hear David read it out, like act it out loud, and just see it used in context, all of a sudden all those light bulbs go off, and you're like,
Yeah.
you come away understanding the Raven maybe for the first time ever. And we've had adults come on and say the same thing. Just the
Mm-hmm.
comment section on our YouTube channel is just full of people saying, this is the first time I've ever looked at this story by Poe this way. Or so that kind of drives us too, because we want to, the stuff that we're learning, we want to share, and we want other people, and then it'll just keep the legacy of Poe alive, and it'll just feed into everything else if you love learning, I think, and it helps students understand. So I'm just
Yeah.
talking too much, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's okay.
No,
But that's
I
one of the
agree.
reasons why we were excited about you joining us for the launch party, is because we're hoping that this will kind of help spurn when they hear and see the Telltale Heart from a visual perspective. A lot of people get things, like you were saying, that they don't necessarily get or comprehend when they're reading, especially when it comes to language,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the language back then isn't being used in today's
Right.
communication. So
Mhm.
that's why we were so excited that you were going to share with us, and we
Yes.
could present this to our listeners and our watchers, and let them see for themselves what you are bringing to the wonderful world, whether it's through education or it's just in general.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you for sharing, and we will jump right into looking at the movie,
Yes.
the video of The Telltale Heart.
Yes. And then afterwards, because I don't want to give too much away for those who haven't seen it, we definitely want to discuss the narrator, the adaptation of the narrator, because I think that's really an important factor here, and it's so well done in their film, and I think everybody's gonna love it.
Yes,
So if you'll just
Great.
we did.
wait one moment, we'll start the movie. Get set up.
Find the right channel.
Yes. And here we go.
true. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But how can you say that I am mad? Disease had only sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was my sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heavens and on earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe. How calmly, how healthily, I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I know. Abide with me, fast falls eventide. The darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the hopeless, oh, abide with me. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed. And so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. Swift to its close ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories pass away. change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changest not, abide with me. In life, in death, O Lord, abide with me. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He'd been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He'd been saying to himself,
"It's nothing but the wind in the chimney."
or,
"It's only a mouse running across the floor."
yes, he has been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. May I help you?
Yes, madam. There have been reports of a disturbance here.
Screams heard coming from inside. We've been deputed to search the premise.
Certainly, gentlemen. Come right in. It was a dream, of course. A terrible nightmare befell me, and I woke up screaming. It felt so real. It kept me up most of the night. I could hear it chasing me, this growling sound. I saw a light around a corner and woke up. By the time I realized it was a dream, I'd been screaming for several minutes.
And the old man?
Absent. In the country. I'm afraid I'm not used to an empty house and quite unaccustomed to being alone.
Whereabouts did you say?
The country.
Yes. The country. How did you say he got there?
By train? Yes, he took the train. It's faster than a horse, of course.
Yes, that's true. It used to take 2 months to cross this great country of ours, but now you can do it in 18 days.
My father and I once made it to California and back in and out of a summer.
Impressive. Very impressive. Although, everything is just rush, rush, rush now. You know, I don't know about you, but when I'm in a hurry, I always seem to forget something. There's a saying, haste makes waste. I think that's how it goes.
You know, that reminds me of a case we had a few years back. A murder. The man was a lawyer. A good citizen. Or so it seemed. He had a wife, lots of pets, you know, like cats, dogs, even a monkey in that big house. Till one day he buried an axe in his wife's head. Came at her, hammer and tongs. Never gave her reason. A real one, anyway. Tried to say the cat cast a spell on her. Swore he wasn't crazy. Makes you wonder. How long did he have that in his head? Had he been that way for years, just waiting for the right opportunity to strike? Or maybe his wits snapped altogether.
Terrible story. Like I said, we've bothered you enough, man. You have a
My
nice
point is, he would have gotten away with it. But he was in such a hurry to get rid of the body that he left the cat.
Croninship. Our Croninship. I think that was his name. Are you familiar with the story?
I have so many duties around the house, I don't concern myself with horror stories.
Horror stories. You know, there are too many of those happening nowadays. How many murders were there last year?
Too many.
I agree. You know, this country is changing so much. A man killing his wife with an axe. You know, my grandfather always used to say, never trust.
You been listening?
Yes, sir, of course.
Because you seem distracted. Maybe you've had some other thought and something else has come to mind? Netta, are you all right? Are you
Villains, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up these planks. Here is the beating of his
Did you ever have a day when you're trying to drink and your favorite cat walks in? And your tiny heart sings because just yesterday you hung it from a string and now your wife's in the way. When you got an axe you're trying to swing. Did you ever meet someone with a filmy blue eye, and when he looks at you it's kinda hard to describe? You even like this man, but you know he's got to die, and so you carry out a plan in the middle of the night. Do you chop it up and burn the bits, or throw it in a well, or do you pack it in a box and ship it, dig a grave down in the cellar? What do you do with a corpse? Don't you worry about the smell, and also how do you know when someone's dead? Sometimes it's hard to tell. When you have a little problem you don't want folks to find, or perhaps you've been insulted and revenge is on your mind, just go down to the basement in the back behind the wine. Consider some home masonry to cover up your crime. Do you chop it up and burn the bits, or throw it in a well, or do you pack it in a box and ship it, dig a grave down in the cellar? What do you do with a corpse? Don't you worry about the smell, and also how do you know when someone's dead? Sometimes it's hard to tell. Do you chop it up and burn the bits, or throw it in a well, or do you pack it in a box and ship it, dig a grave down in the cellar? What do you do with a corpse? Don't you worry about the smell, and also how do you know when someone's dead? Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Hold on.
All right. I had to stop the next video like that popped up.
Yeah, they were talking to us. It sounded weird. We're like, what in the world's going on?
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
welcome back from watching the film The Telltale Heart. And I think you said somebody had some
Yes, we got a couple of
comments.
comments here from JL Royce. Says really enjoyed the version, loved the song.
Yes.
Certain Demonic, loved the black cat reference that was slipped in. So
Okay.
that's our two main comments that we've got right now from our YouTube live. And once more, as I said, I love the music.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Oh,
Just-
thank you. That was Ryan. So
Yeah.
Ryan Stewart is our composer.
Very,
And then the song at the end is Charming, is a band called Charming Disaster. So they wrote that song at the end.
my kind of band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Oxymoron
really
for
cool. Yeah.
name.
I like them a lot. Yeah.
So I kind of mentioned before, I didn't want to give too many spoilers for those who had not watched this yet, but the take on the narrator, just before seeing your film, I think most people just assume Poe wrote this as a male narrator because just, I don't know, just from that time frame and
Well, most of his
yeah.
stories he's written in narrator form, and we all assume it's just him telling the
right.
story.
Well, exactly, because it's an unreliable narrator.
Mhm.
And so just will talk to us about why you went in the direction of the caregiver, the mad woman, because it was beautifully done.
Yeah. So I guess the story behind the choice of the narrator, right? So I think I don't think it's wrong to assume that it's a male. That's certainly my assumptions, and just about everybody's assumption. You just assume it's a Victorian story. It's going to be about a guy. There's a couple of notations about that, though, is that one thing as you study Poe, as you become engaged with Poe, you realize that what he leaves out is just as important as what he puts in.
Mhm.
And he never mentions the gender of the narrator. There is the line "mad men know nothing," but when you would talk about man in that time period, that meant everybody. So that certainly could have meant that. It could have meant a man, but it could have just meant anyone.
Yeah.
Drawing on the sense that we're talking about a servant here, and this doesn't have to be a servant. We just took the understanding that, okay, you have to make a choice and you have to run with it. And so we said, okay, well, if it's a house servant, unless you were a very well, like a large house with a butler and a staff,
Mhm.
most likely the servant would be a woman at that time period. So we kind of went with that. There's no mention of relative. Nobody says, oh, she doesn't say I love dad. It's I love the old man.
Mhm.
Could be, I mean, that's a very casual way to refer to dad. I don't even know if they said refer to your dad as an old man back then, but it just didn't catch that vibe. So we just said, okay, yeah, it sort of makes sense. We sort of had some discussions with some scholars and they were like, it could be, there's nothing specific about it. Whereas like some of the other stories, it's very clear. And in this one, it isn't.
Yeah.
Now Poe did loosely base these stories on some real life events. One was in the 1820s, one was in the 1830s, and they were both murders. One was the murder of Captain Joseph White in the middle of the night, snuck into his room and beat him to death. And then the other one was based on the trial of James Wood, which was the first insanity trial, I think, in the United States, the trial based on insanity. So the question was like, okay, well, what is sane? Those kind of things. Now, both of those perpetrators were men, but we went with servant ideal, and we had also seen it acted out as like the Edgar Allan Poe Theater in Baltimore. They do a bit where the narrator is a female.
Mhm.
And it looks really cool. And so we're like, all right, well, that's kind of what we're going to run with. And I know for us personally, when we read it, we just sort of changed the script to indicate that. So to me, it just kind of jumped out as being more impactful. It also helps that it's kind of a trend nowadays to do that. So that was
Yeah.
it's an artistic trend. So to me, it just worked. I've really had nothing. We've heard nothing but really positive feedback on it, and we do have some historical reasons for it that I think are pretty relevant.
Mhm.
I'm going to take credit for it because it was my idea.
There you go. There you go.
'Cause it was a male. He had written the script as a male, and I was like, why don't we make it a female? Why not? And then the why not questioning just led into all of that. Because it's like, why does it have to be a male? I mean, it's already a pet peeve of ours that every single illustration you see of anything Poe has Poe as the narrator, when there's no reason to indicate that like any of his stories, it was him. Like
Right.
all the artwork has Poe, and we're like, why? Like, why? It's just an unreliable narrator. The person could look like anything. Like, it could be a blonde-haired person. You don't know. And like an Annabelle Lee, you don't know that the person was like, looked like Poe and was dark and morose. The dude could have been like young and like, like dark, really dark, or it could be black. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're looking at that, I just was like, why can't it be a woman? Because
Yeah.
everything you see online always has it portrayed as a man. Like if you were, because I looked up all the illustrations, as many as I could find on Google, and everything I've ever been exposed to as a woman is that it's a man. And then you just eventually have to ask the question, why? Why does it have to be a man?
Yeah.
Especially at that time period. What? No way. It's most likely going to be a woman doing that work.
It's also much more unexpected,
Right.
in the time period. So like a lot of the the officers like initially not being suspicious
Mhm.
would be
Yeah.
could think, well, a woman couldn't possibly do this, like the Lizzie Borden, which was much later than this, but
Yeah.
it's like sort of those assumptions would kind of make sense, you know.
Yeah.
And like what Season said is like we kind of regard that, like when you see a lot of adaptations, they all are like Edgar Allan Poe. They all look just like him with the mustache, and he didn't grow the mustache till I think the last year of his life anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's like it'd be liking to watch to every Stephen King film ever made. The lead is going to be Stephen King. You know, it's just like why do people make that assumption? I really don't know. Not all his stories were based. I mean, you draw as an artist, you draw from your own experiences, certainly, but a
Mhm.
lot of his stories were based on other stories or news events or people in his life that he liked or didn't like, you know. So it's
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
it's very rarely about him specifically, as opposed to like just being maybe influenced by his own experiences, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and I also, from the historical aspect of it, no one would believe that a woman could be that violent or could be that,
Mhm.
because they always portray the woman in the Black Widow kind of phase of where they do
Yeah.
it through poison or they do it through
Yeah.
silence, like arsenic or something like that. So they don't really picture that women are going to be violent. It's always they're quiet, they're demure, they're
Mhm.
unless they've truly gone batty, but to
Yeah.
do that and to be so precise with the dismemberment and all that kind of stuff, I don't think it really fits with people's ideas of women doing that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I love about it is that, hey, it doesn't matter.
But it's possible
It's
that a woman could
possible
do that. Yeah.
the mind can be pushed to do anything. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the things with the story. It's like it was her mind being pushed into it because she just could not stand. And then, when you're driven to that edge, you're capable of anything,
Yeah.
no
Well,
matter
and that's
the gender.
that's the there's a madness that's brewing in there. So especially at the beginning of the film, you can see that we kind of did go with that sort of quaint and ladylike caretaker kind of
Mhm.
vibe, but there were the voices, the
Yes.
auditory hallucinations that the narrator experiences that if you were going to compare, and there's nothing, again, nothing specific in the story about it, but if you were going to compare it to, say, schizophrenia,
Mhm.
initially a lot of those voices can be pleasant, and then they
Yes.
very quickly cascade out of control. Most schizophrenics are not violent like that, so we didn't like announce it, or we're not. It was just sort of like a guideline of like what those voices might be like,
Mhm.
at the
Yes.
beginning. And so there was almost this mad tormentor that lived inside of her that just eventually like swelled up, and that's where you hear the voices and that kind of like signals the coming of this dark figure that's not really necessarily herself but lives inside of her, that she just kind of becomes someone else, and
Yeah.
eventually it gets impossible to ignore, like at the end with the detectives.
Yep.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, and that adds to it, I believe, because it's the history of knowing the visual, and which helps because when you have the readers like being teachers of the young
Mhm.
and everything, sometimes they don't comprehend without a visual. And so throwing it in their face and saying, look, you're seeing this, now put it with what you know, and then kind of breaking the barrier
Mhm.
of the set mind into wider mindset. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, very well done.
Yes. Did any of our viewers today have any questions or other comments?
Nope, those were the only comments that we
Okay.
had so far. And
Okay. And I think season, didn't you say the Raven was how long?
What is the runtime exactly on the Raven?
It's like 15 minutes.
15 minutes. We have right at 14 minutes because season had asked if we could possibly show that as well.
Sure.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it would be great.
Yeah.
And so let's see, because this will run into right at the end of you guys' time slot. And so before we go ahead and show it, thank you so much for
Yes.
being on here with us and talking about the Telltale Heart. And if you are in Baltimore this weekend, they will be at the Poe Fest. Go by and see them. They're awesome people, and they've got really cool merchandise too. Susan's wearing the hat and love Poe with the sunglasses. So
He's styling.
yes. Anything else you guys want to add before we show the Raven?
I think just let it play. Be a good one.
All right.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for joining us.
Yes,
and,
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. See you.
Thank
See ya.
you. Let me just pull this up.
Where you had that open when you showed.
Hold on one moment, everybody.
Technology.
Yes, here it is. It was waiting for us.
Yep.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
'Tis some visitor tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more.
Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore. For the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here, forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating,
'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more.
Presently my soul grew stronger. Hesitating then no longer,
Sir,
said I,
or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you.
Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortals ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word,
Lenore.
This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, something louder than before.
Surely, said I.
Surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. The wind and nothing more.
Open here I flung the shutter. When, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then the ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore.
Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou,
I said,
art sure no craven. Ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me, what thy lordly name is on the night's plutonium shore.
Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on that placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if its soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered,
Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before.
Then the bird said, nevermore.
Oh my gosh!
Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken,
Doubtless,
said I.
what it utters is its only stock and store, got from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope, that melancholy burden, bore of nevermore.
But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking, fancy unto fancy thinking, what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking,
nevermore.
This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press. Ah, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor.
wretch,
I cried.
thy God hath lent thee. By these angels he hath sent thee respite. Respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Prophet,
said I,
thing of evil. Prophet still. If bird or devil, were the tempter sent, or were the tempest tossed to the ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Prophet,
said I,
thing of evil. Prophet still. If bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp the sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend!
I shrieked upstarting.
Get thee back into the tempest and the night's plutonium shore! Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from out my door!
Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Thank you so much, Thad and Season, for joining us. The Raven is so good, just as good as The Telltale Heart. They're both excellent.
Yes, majorly. We enjoy it very much.
Yes.